And on this session, we will talk about $1 billion error. So nulls were always in Java by design, but we as developers trying to fight them as much as we can. So today, let me introduce Sébastien, who is the core committer of the Spring framework, and we will talk about JSpecify standard and NullAway library. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me. So yeah, I'm Sébastien Deleuze. I'm working in the Spring Framework team. I'm working on null-safety, of course. We are going to talk about that today, but also on Kotlin support, on efficiency, and on various cross-cutting topics. And so yeah, today we are going to talk about how to solve this billion-dollar mistake, and maybe could be one of the trillion-dollar mistake that we had in our industry. We are going to begin to define the problem we try to solve very simply and technically. So imagine that you have this token extractor API, you have an extract token method, and you are going to just use this API using a default implementation. You don't really know the detail. You want to extract a token and you just want to naively print the size, the length of this token. And so you run that and you get this famous NullPointerException because, of course, you can't get the length of a null value. And here this is a pretty simple example, but in practice, in a very complex application with a lot of classes, line of code, you can't really escape that kind of issue. And I guess every developer has faced this kind of exception, likely on production, Friday evening after a deployment. And it takes a pretty long time to fix that, make sure you cover all the use case, redeploy your application, and basically take a part of your weekend. Your boss is upset because there is some issue in production, and the perception of your company is impacted. And it's not only an issue about money, it's also an issue about safety, perception, and robustness of your product. So we want to understand what happened there. What happened there, I think the root issue is that nullability is implicit in Java. It's explicit in Kotlin. We are going to see that a bit later, and I think that was one of the most impressive achievements done by Kotlin. In Java, it's implicit. So here, in this extract token, the Java doc just say, return the extracted token. It don't talk about null values, so maybe the developer has forgotten to specify that, or maybe on purpose, this interface never return null, so maybe this is just a specific behavior of the implementation. There is a lot of unknowns, and when there is a lot of unknowns, there is a lot of opportunities for misunderstanding, and this is what happened here. So what we want to try with JSpecify, which is a project I have been involved for a few years, with various other people from Google, JetBrains, Spring, and many others, is to express the nullability explicitly with some annotations. The mental model that we should have is that the nullness of type usages can be unspecified. This is the default in Java world. We don't know if a value can be nullable or not. But with JSpecify, we are going to add two other modes. A value can be nullable, so it can potentially include null. So you may take care about checking this code path. Or you know for sure it will not include null, and here you don't have to do additional checks, etc. So this is what we are going to do here. We are going to add JSpecify in our simple project. So we are going to add the dependency. So very simple to remember. Implementation, the group ID is org.JSpecify. The artifact ID is JSpecify, and the version is 1.0.0. Okay, super simple, Apache 2 license, very easy to remember. Then I have added this dependency, and I'm going to be able to add this @nullable annotation to explicitly say my return value may be nullable, so be careful. And this is something that acts as a kind of documentation. It can be applied to fields, return values, parameters, and even generic types. And in fact, here we are annotating the type usage. This is why there is target element type use. And we are going to see that as a few impact. We are going also to specify that our parameter here is non-null, so we don't want to support potential null values, and we want developers to get the warning in the IDE if they try to provide a null value. So we specify it. We repeat this annotation in the implementation because the implementation could try to override potentially the behavior that is defined on the interface. So here we repeat our annotation. They are not automatically inherited for the interface. And now we are pretty fine. So when we are back to our code in IntelliJ IDE, we see that the IDE is warning us that, hey, be careful, method invocation of length may produce null pointer exception. And that's pretty cool because here we have the opportunity at development time where it costs no time, no money to just fix it and deal with this kind of code path. So when I present those null safety annotation, I have usually two big questions. The first one is, okay, why not just using optional of T? Because optional is part of the GDK, it's here for quite a long time, it's designed to deal with the absence of value, so hey, this is super idiomatic. You are trying to do something that is already supported. In fact, optional is not usable in a lot of use cases because it introduces runtime overhead, at least while we don't have Project Valhalla, and Project Valhalla may come at some point, but we are not sure yet when, so let's see. But it's not the only issue. It breaks existing API signatures, so think about Spring, the GDK, or any of our popular libraries. If they want to specify explicitly this absence of values, they would have to break all those API. It's impossible for the GDK itself. It's impossible for Spring because we care about backward compatibility. And it's likely not possible just for your company libraries where you don't want to break everything. So we want to have a migration path from this world where null safety is implicit to something where it is managed without breaking all our APIs. The first reason is that optional has been designed for usage for return value. It's not intended for parameters or field, and check the documentation. Optional is very clear. The documentation states it should be used only for return values and not other use case. And last point, maybe that's a more personal point of view, but it increases the complexity of your code and your APIs, and myself, I don't want to have a wrapper everywhere to deal with this kind of concern that is basically very frequent in my code base. So yeah, there is some use case for optional. Myself, I tend to prefer using null safety annotation, but in any case, it's not usable everywhere. The second most popular question is, hey, okay, there is a gazillion of nullable annotation and you introduce a new one, you say it's a golden standard, so why should I trust you? First, you need to try, but I think we have started this JSpecify project with other companies because we were not satisfied with the other options. Spring itself began to use a few years ago some GSR 305 annotation to annotate its own Spring null safety annotation. But there were some issues like licensing was not super clear. There is not a kind of a standard dependency that we can use. It's not usable on generic types, on elements. There is a lot of things that are not working. And the most important point of JSpecify, it's not just a few annotations. It's documentation. It's specification. I think the biggest reason why it took 5 years to release JSpecify 1.0, and I know it's a very long time, it's because we had to agree on the semantics, on the specification that would allow tools vendor like you at JetBrains, also NullAway plugins and others, to implement the same behavior because we want to provide annotations that are not specific to one tool. And so defining those specifications took a very long time because just speaking about nullability of generic types, believe me, it's pretty complex and nuanced. So on user side, it's reasonably simple to use. For tooling vendors, and I guess you know that,
yeah, we will have our
it can be a bit more complex and with a lot of nuances. So something that we want to do is to keep the readability of our code base. And so we have seen when we have migrated the Spring code base to use null safety annotation that basically 90% of the use case are non-null and basically just 10% is nullable. And so basically what we want to do to keep the readability is to define that the default is non-null and we just want to provide an explicit signal to say, hey, here, this return value is nullable. And so there is various ways to do that, but with JSpecify in Spring project, we tend to recommend to create this default at package level. So basically, you have a null-marked annotation that will basically define that by default, every type usage is non-null, and if you want to have something nullable, you need to specify it with an explicit nullable annotation. And so here we annotate this package. Be careful, subpackages are not annotated automatically, so you need to annotate every subpackage manually. And then you can see here that in the JSpecify dependency, we have 4 annotations, non-null and nullable. We have seen that previously. Null mark to annotate a package, a class, a method, to say the default is non-null. And you have also null unmarked if you want to specifically switch back to the Java default, often specified for a specific scope, like a specific method where basically you get some issue with nullability. So here, that means that while keeping the same semantics, I can remove my non-null annotation because by default, this unannotated parameter in a null mark package will be interpreted as non-null. I have a pretty good readability where I only have an explicit signal for the return value, which is nullable. And you can see that if I try to pass a null value here, my IDE is providing me the warning, everything is fine, and my code base is more readable. So yeah, this is the best trade-off we can provide with this kind of code. It's also possible to use null-marked annotation on the module side, but there is various issues. It may apply only for the module path, not the class path. So my advice is just package is the right granularity. If you want to have something more specific, maybe use class, but module, it's not the right place, even if technically that's possible.
Yeah. May I ask a short
Sure.
question? So yeah, there is a question, logical question in the chat saying, why not Lombok, which is pretty popular, which is kind of not a standard, it's a kind of controversial thing, but why not Lombok? Why don't you use Lombok as a base for your standard?
That's interesting. I have not, this is the first time I have this question. So Lombok is providing some shortcut to basically provide more concise code.
Yeah.
But here we really just want to just have a very specific indication that we have this null safety thing. We are going to do the checks at build time, and I'm not sure. Yeah, is there is a nullable annotation on the Lombok side?
As far as I remember,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. I'm not very knowledgeable on that, so I can't provide much insight. But basically, here we really don't want to change the bytecode that is generated or things like that. We just want to have some additional checks to check the consistency of the null safety and get this kind of explicit thing. And again, there is various variants of nullable annotation. And here we just want to have something that is independent of any tooling, just focus on null safety.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay, so another question. Is it a way to simply make the nullability check for the whole project, not for every package and sub-package?
So you have some capability to do that, for example, with NullAway that we are going to present a bit later. You can enable that automatically, but I think it's on purpose that we want to select the scope of the null safety because, like I said, this is not just a two-state system. This is a three-state system where unspecified is very important because, for example, you will always have a mixture of null safe code and non-null safe code, okay? Yeah. And so it's very important to have a fine-grained understanding on where null safety is defined because typically in Spring we try to define it in all the projects, but I mean some projects may gradually migrate to enable JSpecify just on a subset, and I think it's a pretty good behavior that basically the checks done by the tooling, IntelliJ ID, NullAway, etc. is just enabled on, you need a signal basically, and this signal is typically, we enable that on this package. And honestly, it's not a lot of pain to add null marked on each package.
Yes.
So, but yeah, if you want, you can configure NullAway to do those checks automatically everywhere. But I mean, again, it's very important to know if you are in by default null safety is unspecified or by default it's going to be in this package. I guess if you are using not using null marked but just nullable and non-null, potentially you could have those checks working in IntelliJ ID and that should be fine.
Yeah, thanks.
So you may be aware or not. Myself, I was not aware, and I know very senior developers that were not aware that when you are using annotations that are just defining target type use, there is some syntax that could be a bit surprising. So, for example, here, if we are using a fully qualified type, you say, okay, everything is fine. No. Basically, you get an error because the Java specification specify that for type use annotation, they should go very close to the type after the last dot. And very senior developers are not aware of that. Myself, I was not. This is Java specification.
Neither do I.
Yeah, from Java 8. Okay. Same for nested type. If you want to apply some annotation that is only targets the type usage, you are going to need to move the annotation close to the inner type because you will get the same kind of issue. I think it's because there may be some basically, if you want to use type use annotation with other kind of annotation, maybe you want to control more closely where it apply. But just this kind of syntax can be a bit surprising at the beginning. So yeah, I think you have learned something today.
I totally learned something today.
Okay, no problem. Very senior developer from the Spring team. I won't say any name.
Yeah.
Were not aware. Myself, I was not. Yeah, you get used to it, but it could be a bit surprising. And again, it's not a choice of JSpecify. It's a Java specification. Just JSpecify is one of the first time where annotation using only target type use are widely used, and so this is why we discover this kind of things for the first time usually. So I like the fact that IntelliJ IDE is providing some feedback in the IDE, but we are in Java world, we like static typing, and we want our build to break if basically something is unsafe. And I want my CI to be red because I have missed some null-safety checks. This is the point, because initially in the Spring Framework project, we were just using IntelliJ IDE to analyze null-safety warnings, and we had a lot, so we fix stuff, but we miss things. Sometimes we do a change and we forget to watch. So I think it's pretty important to basically make your build failing if null-safety is not okay, especially if your libraries are used by Kotlin developers, because for Java developers, null-safety mismatch will lead to warnings. For Kotlin developers, that will be compilation error. And so I think it's pretty important to do that kind of thing. So we are going to do that. We have our same simple example, and we are going to first check that here we have our warning in the IDE, but when I do the build, sadly, everything is green. And we want this to be failing. We want the IDE and Gradle be agree basically on the status of the project. So we are going to add NullAway. So NullAway is an extension of ErrorProne, which is a plugin technology that is provided by Google. Here we are using the Gradle plugin for ErrorProne. We are going to add the dependency for the core of ErrorProne, and we are going also to add the special extension NullAway that is going to focus on the null safety checks. We are going to do a bit of configuration. So we are going to say basically that we want the checks to be automatically enabled for package or scope that is annotated with null marked. This is what we discussed previously. We disable the other error-prone checks because error-prone is doing a lot of other checks than null safety. Here we want to focus on null safety. And we also specify that those, the mismatch should be errors because, like in Kotlin world, I want to have a hard break when null safety is not okay. So now I'm going to try again just the very same build with Gradle that my CI or my developer will use locally. And here you can see that, yeah, for this time, I'm happy to get an error. I have a nice error message. This is consistent with what I see in the IDE. And nobody will be able to build this project until null safety is fixed. This is kind of consistent with the developer experience we expect from a Java ecosystem that deals with null safety. So I think that's super important. We have introduced that not initially in Spring, but now we try to introduce that every time because otherwise, again, it's breaking the Kotlin developers to use your library, and you don't have really a null safe API. You have an half-baked null safety. It's not enough. In order to make the configuration of nullability easier, so Andy Wilkinson has been working on a nullability plugin for Gradle. It's mainly intended for usage in the Spring project, a bit like the Spring format thing, but potentially you can use it. It will just automatically configure error-prone, add the related dependency, configure it to just focus on the null-marked packages. So basically, this is just a shortcut that we use for Spring portfolio project, but some people may find it useful. It's 0.0.1, so pretty new. It has been released this week, so pretty young, but we plan to use that in the various Spring project, and Spring Framework is already using it to configure it. Again, just a shortcut, but a pretty useful one. Okay, so now we have detected there is an issue, but null pointer exceptions are not going to disappear by magic. We want to deal with those code paths. So like we do in Kotlin, we are going to handle those code paths. So here, I'm going to test that if token is null, then I'm going to print a special error message, could be some specific processing. And if token is not null, in the else clause, basically, we know for sure that here, no null pointer exception is possible because here we know for sure with the static analysis, with the null-safety information that basically no null pointer exception is possible, and it's really about that. It's really that simple. Is with the explicit signal that something may be doable, I need to do some specific processing. I think this is something that Kotlin developers know very well. You need to do something if this is null. It's not going to disappear, and you as a developer are the most suitable person to decide what is the right processing for an error. So a more meaningful error than null pointer exception, that is a technical one, could be a business error, skip that processing, do nothing, print something special. It's your decision, basically. Something that is very interesting is that JSpecify allows to deal with the nullness of arrays and varargs. Because if we take a step back, when we have arrays, we need to differentiate the nullability of the array itself. The array could be null, or we could have an array that is not null, but its elements are null. So we need to differentiate that, and with other variants, and maybe the Lombok one and other variants are impacted. You can't make this distinction.
There is a question regarding that in the chat. Do collections support null for both collection and the elements?
Yeah, so this is what we are going to see, and after we are going to see that applied to generics. But this is where JSpecify, I think, provide a kind of unique added value. So in order to enable those checks with NullAway, I'm going to enable what is called the JSpecify mode. It's basically more checks on generics, on array elements, etc. Take a bit more time with error-prone to execute that, but I think that's reasonable. We are going to use a more recent version of Java because there has been some fixes in Java-C, so use at least Java 22. And we keep our Java 17 baseline here by defining the release to Java 17, but you can basically use a more recent Java-C version and still have a Java 17 baseline. It's possible. So here we are going to change our interface to use just arrays. And here with string nullable of brackets, the array itself is nullable, and the elements are nullable as well. Here the elements are not nullable, but the array itself is nullable. But here and this is the most popular use case, typically the array itself is not nullable, but the element could be potentially nullable, and so we are going to apply the specific checks. Again, the syntax could be a bit surprising initially, but if you think about it, this is the only solution. You need to differentiate the nullability of the array of the elements. There is no other solution. So here, I think you will quickly get used to it, to differentiate those two elements, and you can specify both.
How it will how you can express it in syntax? There is a question in the chat. If you do not import the annotation, will it be the full specification under the @ sign? So, for example, you say java.lang.@org JSpecify annotations nullable space string, right? Will it look like this? I mean, full import of the annotation, of the nullable annotation in the middle of the full specification.
It could look like, but in practice you will not use
totally,
that. But you could do some pretty. Maybe this is a source of new puzzler for
totally,
Java code exercise. Like, is it valid code or is it invalid? I think you can yeah, you can trap a lot of people with that kind of thing, and you could end up with pretty ugly syntax. But I mean, what is interesting with the null safety is that Java need to accept its historical choices.
Yeah.
Type use annotation has been introduced, I think, in Java 8, and you have seen it's not. The syntax is a bit unusual. Even Java C has been fixed in Java 22 for some pretty regular use case. A lot of people are not used to it. So yeah, Java need to accept its historical choices.
Okay.
The default is unspecified. There was no type use annotation. And yeah, we try to find a path by introducing this kind of annotation to deal with null safety as an afterthought. And we will see at the end that there is an ongoing JEP. But
yeah, okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
So, in addition to array elements, oh, by the way, for varargs, this is exactly the same. So basically, you put nullable ... and that will mean that the array baking the vararg is nullable. Okay, so same
Crazy.
thing. Yeah, it's a bit crazy, but array basically syntactic sugar for varargs are basically syntactic sugar for arrays. We have also the nullness of generics, which is supported, and this is one of the most complex part of the specification for tooling vendors. Good luck with that. So here, for example, we are going to use a wrapper. It's a bit artificial, but that's for the purpose of the example. So the return value is a wrapper of string, and the string could be potentially nullable. Here, we want to make it possible for the user to potentially make wrapper value nullable or not. So here, we use the syntax t extend nullable of object to mean that basically t could be nullable or not. We want to let the choice, okay? I could also put nullable of t, but that means that t is always nullable. And here I want to give more flexibility. And so on usage side, I will specify that here, for this use case, nullable, the string is nullable. If I don't specify anything, the default specified by nutmark will apply also with the generic type. And I'm going to update in the various places that this is nullable. Otherwise, NullAway will raise some error because, hey, you have some inconsistency on that. But again, if you specify nothing, the default by nullmarked applied. So that means your enclosing type is non-nullable. And if you want to declare directly in wrapper definition that nullable of t, that means that it will be always nullable. Here, we choose a bit more flexibility and that introduce some verbosity because we need to declare that basically it's nullable everywhere. But yeah, it's possible, and that make, for example, for reactor, for example, where we are dealing with mono of t or flux of t, with JSpecify, we were not able to express for Kotlin users, for example, that the value is always non-nullable. So people get platform types, mono t of exclamation mark. Here, with JSpecify, that can provide a kind of first-class developer experience for Kotlin developer. We are going to see a demonstration right now. So for Kotlin developers, they are used to have null safety managed by the language, the Kotlin ecosystem. But when you are building Spring application or just for any kind of Kotlin JVM use case, you are dealing with Java APIs. And so previously there was some kind of support for null safety, but it required some special configuration, like a flag to say strict interpretation of the GSR 305. So with JSpecify, what is pretty cool is that as of Kotlin 2.1, the Kotlin compiler is able to interpret the JSpecify annotation on any kind of Java dependency, and it will throw errors if it does not match. So that means that as a Java developer, if you publish a library that is using JSpecify, Kotlin developers will get strict null checks. So that's super cool feature, but just again, be aware that if you don't get it right, you may prevent Kotlin developers to use your API, because if you say this thing is not null, they won't be able to provide null because otherwise there will be a compilation error. So here we have a string exclamation mark which says platform type, so null safety is not defined. This is the default that you had previously without JSpecify. And with JSpecify, we just annotate our library with @nullable. That will be a string exclamation mark. That means that it's nullable. And if your library package is annotated with null marked, it will be non-null. So that really make your Java library Kotlin first, basically, and provide an idiomatic Kotlin developer experience, which is pretty cool, I think. So let's now talk about Spring application. But I wanted to spend a fair amount of time because a lot of the value that brings JSpecify is applicable for the whole JVM ecosystem. It's not specific for Spring, but on Spring side, we have been part of this working group for many years. We believe that's a very important topic, and to be honest, we have been inspired by Kotlin. So initially, we introduced with Jürgen null-safety annotation in Spring because we have seen the added value on Kotlin side, and we wanted Java developers to benefit. It has just taken a bit of time to get JSpecify, which is the right incarnation of this null safety for Java. But that's really an inspiration that is coming from Kotlin. And so it was funny because a few months ago I published like something on LinkedIn like I do usually, but this one got quite a success and catch the attention of a lot of people because I merged the biggest commit in Spring Framework history. Some people may think I should have split, but I mean, when you are migrating a whole code base for null safety, we want to get basically your build green. So in any case, this is a big change. And so this was a lot of changes. We migrated from the former Spring Framework null safety annotation to JSpecify. So basically that changed all Spring classes. And so that was quite a lot of work to fix all the issues, add null safety on generic types, array elements, varargs, etc. Yeah, quite a few days and nights of work, but that was pretty cool, and yeah, people like that, maybe because of the big number of files change, or maybe because they are interested about null safety. I'm not sure, but that was cool to bring more attention on this work.
What will happen with the Spring null safety library? Is it still like bundled into the framework, or are you going to deprecate it gradually because it is still as it goes as a dependency?
Yeah, so the previous incarnation was basically Spring annotation that were meta annotated with GSR 305 to basically try to use this kind of dormant GSR that provides some semantics. In Spring Framework 7, we are deprecating the Spring annotation, so they are still usable because we don't want to break your apps if they are using it, but they are deprecated for future removal. And so that means that we are recommending, as of Spring Boot 4 and Spring Framework 7, to use the new JSpecify annotation that are coming with Spring. So when you get Spring dependency, you get the JSpecify dependency, and they are provided out of the box. It's just that we are leveraging this small dependency with 4 annotation instead of providing our own specific.
We should probably have inspection for that, saying like it is deprecated. Yeah.
Yeah. You will have they are deprecated properly, so you will have the name, which is stroke.
It is annotated.
Yeah. No. You will get the information.
Yeah.
But you have the time to migrate, no problem if you want to do that, but we recommend basically moving away from the Spring annotation to the JSpecify one because they are better. This is a kind of pragmatic standard that we try to push with other players, and yeah.
Okay.
So on Spring side, basically, here we are going in this small example, going to add a very simple Spring Web dependency. We are not even using Spring Boot. It's just a very, very simple example. So JSpecify is available as of Spring Framework 7, and we have annotated the code base with Spring Framework 7. So I'm using here a milestone build. I'm going to go back to my application, and I'm going to just do a very simple example of REST client, which is the successor of REST template, so an HTTP client. And we are going to build just a client with a fake URL. And we are going to get the response from a body exposed by an arbitrary endpoint. And those body could be empty or not. And typically in Spring and various other HTTP clients, that means that the body could be nullable, and a lot of people are not expecting that. And when some endpoint return no body at all, boom, NullPointerException. So here, we want to be aware that we are getting an endpoint result that may be empty. And so we are using Spring REST client API to say retrieve the body as a string. And you can see that here we have annotated our code base on Spring side with @nullable from JSpecify. That means that my IDE, NullAway, etc. will be able to tell me, hey, the return value may be nullable. You may have to do some specific checks. So here, if I do my naive body.length, my IDE is able to warn me, and I don't have to use JSpecify in my project. It's coming for free, even for people that don't do the effort to use JSpecify in their application. Some use case, you know that your endpoint is non-null, so you may wonder, how can I express that to avoid some compilation error? And here you have various options. One is to use objects that require non-null. It's going to be inline, it's very fast, and so it's a way to say to NullAway, IntelliJ ID, I know this for sure is non-null. We are also providing some required body method that provide directly that. But we can also use some assertions utils that we have in Spring, like assert.state, if I want to throw an illegal state exception, if basically the body is null. And so here that's interesting because after the assert.state invocation, I want to make sure that it is understood that the value won't be null. And this is possible with an act contract annotation that is inspired by the JetBrains one that say basically if basically the expression is false, then it will throw an exception. And with this act contract annotation, basically, and with a bit of configuration, because we need to say to NullAway, hey, I have a custom contract annotation, which is not the JetBrains one, so the one provided by Spring. So here we are providing more added value than just NullAway provide. Here, NullAway and IntelliJ ID are able to understand that after the assert.state invocation, body is not null, thanks to this add contract, basically annotation. So this is required because if we don't have that, we have too many false positives, too many compilation error. So we need this kind of more advanced capability. And maybe later that will be standardized at JSpecify level, but for now we have to deal with that.
A short question regarding NullAway. So the question was, is there, are we going to discuss NullAway versus check framework?
So there is various options. From our evaluation, NullAway was the best for our use case. Okay. We have a very good connection with the project lead, so we are raising bugs, they are fixing it, etc. Okay. So, but there is a lot of other good checkers, and yeah, checker framework is good. There is a lot of others, and the key point of JSpecify is that it's independent of any tooling. So JSpecify, full specification, and we encourage all tooling vendors, IDEs, checkers to support that, and most of the checkers are already supporting NullAway. So yeah, I'm basically talking about NullAway because I have to choose a tool, and for Spring projects, we have chosen NullAway. But you are totally free to use any other checker if that's the best use case for you. Of course, NullAway has also some Maven support, so you can also use that. But yeah, feel free to use any checker that fits your need and just benchmark the available solution. Okay. So it's the purpose to be independent on any tooling, any IDE, you can use what you want.
Totally understand. So
just check the level of support because it may support some basic use case, but not generic type checks. But even NullAway is not perfect. It's pretty young for this JSpecify mode. So some checks are not implemented for generic types. We are also working on adding null-safety information from the JDK itself because we are providing some null-safety information, but for just a subset of the API. So yeah, no checker is perfect right now, but that's an evolving ecosystem, and I hope the support will be basically pretty wide in terms of tooling.
Thanks.
Okay, the main purpose of our effort is to be able to implement some build time checks. Okay, this is really about compilation checks. I think NullAway is implemented as an annotation processor, which is bundled in the plugin, and we want to have no cost at runtime, basically. This is one of the purpose and one of the beauty of that thing. But, of course, we may want to detect nullness at runtime for some features. So, in Spring Framework 7, we are introducing a new enum class, which is called Nullness, and it will provide free constants, unspecified, nullable, and non-null. This is the famous free state system that I have promoted at the beginning. So unspecified nullness is Java default for non-primitive, but primitive are non-null. Nullable can include null. This is typically code annotated with a null label from JSpecify, and you can also have non-null things for the default with null mark, etc. And we are providing basically util methods for getting the nullness for a field, method parameter, return value. And it's not just about JSpecify annotation. It's going to understand Kotlin nullability. It's going to say something is not null when this is a primitive type for Java. It's going even potentially to interpret other kind of null-safety annotation. So it's something that really helps. Also, if you are doing manually some checks just with reflection, be aware again, type use annotation require using different reflection API than regular annotation and return value methods, etc. So again, you may be an experienced Java developer and not be aware. I don't remember by heart the API to use, but basically it's different to get the annotation from a return value than the annotation of a type used in a return value. So this is a nuance that you need to get. This Nullness API is taking care about all those details and will detect annotation on the type or on the return value for you. So I highly recommend it if you are using Spring Framework 7. And we are using that in practice for more high-level features. Like it's already the case, but we are supporting nullable information at runtime to know, for example, if a request param is optional or not. So if you have request param without nullable annotation, that means that Spring MVC will consider that if this is not provided, there will be an error. While if you are annotating it with nullable, or you can also use optional for that, you will basically Spring MVC accept that as a null value, and then you can deal with it in the implementation. So in various places, we are, I think in Spring Data, we are using that as well. Of course, those annotations, even if they are primarily intended for build time checks with no runtime costs, we are using that at programming level to know, okay, here I have a clear signal that this thing is optional. And so we adapt the behavior. Okay, we have, real life is complicated, and so we have some issue like lazy initialization that may require a bit of special care. So, for example, in continuing with our Spring sample, we are going to introduce a Java class that is going to be lazily initialized. Okay, so we have lazy init bin, which is going to implement a Spring interface, which is initializing bin. That basically defines that at some point the application context is going to initialize a field, for example, but when we instantiate lazy init bin, it's not known. Okay, so of course I promote constructor-based injection, etc. But here we have to deal with some legacy code, or it's not possible in that context because we will get the value from the application context. And so here, it's a perfectly valid use case. I'm going to initialize lazily this field, but guess what? When I'm going to build that thing, it's going to break because there is some inconsistency in terms of nullness, and basically NullAway is not really happy. So, okay, let's try to fix it. We are going to annotate our field as nullable, and we think that everything's fine. So, okay. Oh, I see something in with a warning, so I guess that will break as well. So here we say the field is nullable, but then when we try to get the non-nullable value, because in practice it has been initialized by Spring, there is still an inconsistency, so we are a bit blocked here. So to solve this kind of issue, maybe later there will be a specific annotation, but here for now we just recommend to use suppress warning nullAway.init, which is a special suppress warning that basically say, here I'm going to lazily initialize that thing, so please don't bother me, I know what I do, Spring will take care about initializing that thing. And so here, yeah, I can escape this blocking point with this kind of special suppress warning. I hope that later we will have some kind of more first-class annotation to deal with that, but from a static analysis, that's not really easy to solve. And I think the real way to solve that kind of issue is some evolution of the Java language. And there is such evolution, which is stable value, which is exactly about that. Stable value is a new feature that is coming in Java 25, I think, and it's going to allow to lazily initialize a value. And when you get the value, the compiler will make sure that it is initialized already. So this is exactly this kind of behavior. Of course, it will require changing your code, but at least that will provide a construct in the Java language that is pretty clean, that provides some runtime efficiency improvement in addition to solving this kind of build time null safety checks. And so I think this is, on Java side, the way to solve this kind of issue. But don't prevent JSpecify to try to provide a specific annotation.
Yeah, regarding Spring, so if I have like @value and a field annotated with @value and reference, is it the same?
Yeah, same. You are typically going to want to annotate it with @3press warning nullaway.init, or maybe we will standardize on a more neutral thing to get IntelliJ ID, understanding that as well, but that's really the same thing. Spring or something else is going to initialize that thing after the class instantiation. So from a static code analysis, there is an issue, but in the context of Spring, I know that when I will use that class, that instance that has been initialized by Spring, the value will be non-null, and so I want to use the very same thing.
Yeah, and the question regarding the using Jakarta annotation not blank.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because there is the null safety checks, which is really about static analysis, compilation, and the validation. Okay, so it is two different things, and so potentially you can use JSpecify annotation for your validation, but I mean it could be two different things. You are going to do much more advanced checks. You are going to check the blank, regex, whatever. So it's two different notion, and that can be combined, of course, but validation is a bit more.
So it's for programmatic usage, and the JSpecify is for a compiler, basically.
Yeah, most for the compiler, but again, I hope that, maybe it makes sense for validation tool to know to interpret the JSpecify annotation to basically infer that, at not null basically is the same like at non-null from JSpecify, and they could infer that automatically. To just have to specify the additional validation capabilities. Could make sense.
Okay, thanks.
But validation tool need to understand the type use annotation, and I think that's not the case. So right now they are invisible for IBAN validator or the tooling that you are going to use. But maybe a good feature to implement. So there is an ongoing effort to provide null-safe APIs in Spring Boot 4. And when I talk about Spring Boot 4, I'm talking about Spring Boot itself and all the Spring portfolio. So I think this is the biggest feature we are currently working on. It's really about not providing those null safety annotation just on Spring Framework and some part of Spring Data like until now. It's about getting all Spring portfolio to provide null-safe APIs. And believe me, this is a big chunk of work. I'm very grateful to all my colleagues that are working on that right now, trying to do a bit of after-sales service to answer questions. And we are together as a team. We are trying to contribute issues and fixes on NullAway side, are giving feedback to the working group. So, for example, this afternoon I have a meeting with the JSpecify working group. Brian Clausel from Spring Framework and Spring Boot team will join to basically provide feedback after this implementation. So it's really a collective effort where we are trying hard as a team to provide full null safety. And that means that if you are using Spring, and if yourself you are dealing with null safety in your application, you can be reasonably sure that there is very, very low chance that NullPointerException happen because you are going to check that with NullAway, etc. So if you are just taking advantage of Spring libraries, you will get the warning in the IDE, but you can also get the full experience on the application side. But Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Spring Data, Spring Security, Spring AI, and other projects are going to gradually introduce null safety support. And we target maybe not 100% coverage by November in Spring Boot 4, but a fair amount of Spring API will have null safety, and it's really our goal to get full null safety everywhere. And so our upcoming recommendation, and again, up to you, we don't want to add more work on your plate, but just if you are doing that extra work to basically use null safety annotation in your application or libraries in your companies, use NullAway to check that, use IntelliJ ID or other IDEs that support that. I think that brings a lot of added value because this is actionable even on big legacy projects, okay? There is a migration path. You can take an existing project. We did it for Spring. We did it for huge code bases without breaking APIs. So it's really doable on big projects. I have been discussing with big companies, I won't say name, but big companies who are starting adding null-safety annotation in their big code base just because they have a by design solution to just remove NullPointerException. And for your leadership, or even just for your CTO, or just for yourself to be more sure of what we are shipping on production, it's pretty valuable. So we hope that more Spring developers will use that at application level. And so, yeah, what I really like in this story is that we turn this billion-dollar mistake that you mentioned at the beginning into a zero-cost abstraction, allowing to express the potential absence of value. So it's a bit like Rust, okay? We are used to in the Java world to add more stuff at runtime, etc. But here we are doing something that is mainly build time oriented, that will have no cost at runtime, or very little cost. And we are really turning an issue, a design issue of the language, or an aspect that has been forgotten because so many years ago, into a real feature. And so this is the beauty of that that principle that I really like, and I hope your leadership or CTO will appreciate that kind of thing. Interestingly, null-safety may come natively in Java type system. So you may wonder, okay, so why should I care about JSpecify? It's coming in Java. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of time. Believe me, it took 5 years just to get this JSpecify notation. I'm a big fan of the Java platform team. Honestly, they are doing an amazing job these days, but it's very complex if you need to get Java-C checking null safety everywhere, etc. So it's coming via Project Valhalla. I think Remy Forax has been presenting that a bit earlier. So it's coming from the runtime optimization angle, because I think in Project Valhalla, they need to be able to express that some fields are non-nullable to get everything in line, everything optimized. So here, this JEP draft specify that basically the Java type system may allow to express null-restricted type. So question mark will be a bit like on Kotlin side, it expresses nullable type, but
it is patented, basically.
Yeah, maybe, I'm not sure. But the exclamation mark will be a bit different, because the key point is that on Java side, they can't change the default, okay? So a regular type will remain unspecified. If that will be a breaking change, okay? So Java will not look like Kotlin defaults for null safety, unspecified by default. And so we need a signal to say this is null restricted, okay? And this will be exclamation mark. So that's interesting, because that means that there is no default as package level. I think this is a choice by the Java platform team, and I totally understand. They don't want to require some context to know if something is nullable or not. I mean, I think .NET has tried to introduce some flag. Yeah. It has not really been a smooth ride or a full success. So I think I totally understand the decision that we don't want to have a special flag or a special mode for null-safe Java. I kind of like the fact that we can set a default at the package level, but maybe this is the JSpecify opinion. For the Java type system itself, I think the direction will be that you need to add explicitly exclamation mark. Maybe that's okay, and we will get used to. Maybe that's not okay, and we will continue to use JSpecify notation, and maybe we could imagine a kind of translator of JSpecify notation that will translate that to the bytecode information that will deal with that. I guess people will have the choice. But the key point is that I think it will take many years to get full null safety in the Java platform. Yeah. So I'm super grateful that they are considering adding that. I think that's hugely valuable, and I think the Spring team is going to collaborate with the Java platform team on that and provide feedback, either via JSpecify working group or directly. But yeah, so don't wait for that to make your Java code null safe. And even on Spring side, if we want to switch to that kind of thing, that means that the minimal version of the JVM we support need to support that thing. I think we have many years before that became a reality. But I think that's a super good news to see that on Java side, there is a clear intent to introduce null-restricted type at the type system level. And I hope the JSpecify feedback will be useful for the Java platform team to have some learnings, and there will be some interoperability between both. we are looking for contributors. So people usually ask, how can I contribute to Spring? How can I be an open source developer? So I have a proposal for you. One very valuable source of contribution will be to contribute to NullAway. Basically, the project lead is amazing, is a very kind person. Manu is super knowledgeable, but more and more people are going to use NullAway. There is a bit of bug fix burden, etc. So if you want to start contributing to a reasonably sized project, it's a bit low level, annotation processor, etc., but pretty interesting to also increase your knowledge of the Java language and specification. Go to NullAway GitHub page, there is a link to the Discord server, and honestly, I think this is a pretty nice project to contribute to, and that will be useful for the whole JVM ecosystem, Spring, and etc. So, yeah, contribution, proposal, ID, basically. And yeah, that's it. So if you have any other question.
Yeah, so first I have a feedback on your presentation. It lacks memes, so probably you need XKCD meme about these standards.
I should have used, for the multiple nullable variants. That's a big miss, so I apologize for that one.
So there is a command saying that if Java will add this nullability check with an exclamation mark, it would be quite sad to placing exclamation mark everywhere before every class.
Yeah.
So probably recipe is start with JSpecify and then we can create a converter so you can just apply everything.
Yeah, so I think, again, no promise. It's it's very early days for this JEP. It could change, but if it stays like it is, indeed as a developer, maybe also I will get used to it, but I'm not sure I want to put exclamation mark everywhere. But I also understand the Java platform team who don't want to basically get, when I read Java code, I have my understanding is that the Java platform don't want, okay, I need to check at the package level if it is annotated with that, etc. So it's a kind of opinion that some libraries like Spring or other may have, but when you are reading random Java code, you don't know. And I think the Java platform is very careful to not introduce some variant of Java that could be nullable Java, Java with null-safety, but not exactly the same. So I understand the point of view of the Java platform team. My point of view is that I'm not sure I want to put exclamation mark everywhere.
I don't want the code scream at me.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit noisy, I think. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe the answer will not be the same for everybody. Myself, maybe I will prefer to use the kind of JSpecify converter to the bytecode information from null-safety. Also, be aware there will be some runtime gains. So what is pretty cool is that these build time checks will lead to improvement of your runtime performance when those project Valhalla stuff will change.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe for some people that will be okay, that 10% of their type usage is with the exclamation, excuse me. There will be the 90% of the type use will be the exclamation mark, and I'm not sure it's going to fly for a lot of people. So this is very hard. Honestly, I'm not sure what is the right outcome. Yeah. Maybe the JEP will evolve in a way that provide maybe something that avoid to put exclamation mark everywhere. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, on the level of ID, we can highlight somehow the nullable and non-nullable value types with, like, I don't know, inline or probably like changing font or changing color or something like that. But yeah, exclamation mark will definitely be like noisy code.
It's an almost impossible problem to solve. Again, the key point is that Java can't change its default. And so we have to live with that and find some trade-off and solutions that are fine for everybody. So maybe we have the pragmatic solution with at null marked at package level, and we have the solution that allow to get the meaning of this Java code without knowing the context. And for some code samples, you will just see the exclamation mark.
Yeah. So the final question, and we can say goodbye. So question is, consider I would like to fix nullability annotation in Spring Framework or Spring Boot. Do you expect a test case added in the PR as well?
It depends if you are if you are adding assertions, like Kotlin is doing. Like I think Kotlin is adding automatically assertions for non-null parameters, etc. So test case may make sense. Otherwise, it will be checks that are performed by the compiler itself, so not necessarily. So I think it depends if you are changing the behavior of your code when there is something that is non-null, like assert, require non-null, etc. But otherwise, I think the checks will be done by the compiler itself. Also, you have the choice to enable the null safety checks in your test code base. So potentially your test code compilation may be used as a kind of checker for this kind of thing. And so here, that may make sense to provide a use case if you are enabling null checks on your test code base.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your talk. Thank you for new information.